Jon Biemer, thank you for joining me today.
You're welcome.
So, John, I feel that more and more people care about the environment, but in the most part, we feel helpless. I mean, we are fighting against globalization, against government, against all kind of subsidies, and it just feels so overwhelming for one person to care about the environment and everyone else, consuming and polluting the planet without any regard whatsoever. So whenever I saw your book, I was just very excited to have a conversation on how we can together just have build a better planet. So, John, can you tell us a little bit about your background? How is it that you got to care about the environment?
Okay, I'll give you a very specific story. Way back in the 1970s, I was working in an aerospace company, and uh, one of my bosses invited me to a coffee at home, and he was talking about the problems with nuclear power. And I remember the first page on the flip chart. It said, plutonium is bad for people. And that, over the next week or two, I got to thinking about that a lot and the problems with nuclear power. And that's the time when I started dedicating myself to alternatives to nuclear power and renewable energy, energy conservation, and that kind of thing. So I went back to school, went into mechanical engineering, and basically focused on energy efficiency and solar energy for the next 25 years, and gradually broadened out into sustainability in general. So that's where I got started.
Okay, and you just recently wrote a book called Our Environmental Handprints. Can you tell us what drove you towards writing this book?
Yes. In October of 2013, I had a kind of a vision. I woke up and I realized that there is a whole lot more good that has been done already than most people are aware of. We've got efficient motors that we didn't used to have. We have national parks that we didn't used to have. We have um, laws to protect the environment. You know, the Endangered Species Act. And Canada, I think, has some similar laws, legislation. Uh, we have efficient windows that keep heat in rather than be basically being a net loss to the home or to the building. And I was involved in some of this stuff within my professional stuff, but when I started putting this down on a sheet of paper, it ended up being a bubble chart that just had ever expanding bunches of bubbles. And I realized there's just a whole lot of good that's kind of a pattern of things we've already done that is worthwhile. And that's not to ignore the fact we have global warming and we have some environmental problems now. We have plastic in the oceans and things like that. Uh, but my sense also is that we get further when we focus on what we're trying to do rather than what we're trying to avoid. So I'm focused on the idea of being creative about how to go forward, how to not just solve the problem, but to um, change the system. And that's hard to do for an individual person, but there are all sorts of small things we can do to help that along. And we can also play a leadership role in doing some of the larger things.
Okay, and when you talk about change the system, are you talking about individual actions that we could do as consumer, or are you talking about our contribution to the political system? Because both of them is personal, but both of them can help to change the system.
Right. Well, yes, I'm talking about both. Book is mostly about what we can do as individuals. That's there's a lot of books about policy. Drawdown is a book by Paul Hawkins that talks about all the great things we can do to reverse global warming. And I think it's a great book, but it's a policy level book. I tried to focus on what individuals can do. So what can we do? Let's talk about food for a minute. We can eat organic. Organic takes care of the soil. It's not just healthy, it takes care of the soil. And that's good. And we can go a little further than organic. We can also eat food that help regenerate the soil. And some of that kind of food is normal in our diets, like nuts and fruit. These are trees that don't need to be plowed up every season. They're perennials. There's a whole certification process called the Regenerative Organic Certification Program. And it's new. It's only about 3 years old, and there's only a few companies involved in it at this point. But if we can start buying with food that's regenerative organic certified, we start to contribute to a system that actually will draw carbon out of the atmosphere, as opposed to what agriculture tends to do right now.
Can I ask you about organics? And I don't know much about organic food, but okay, the first thing that I see whenever I go to the supermarket is that an organic banana costs twice as much as a non-organic banana. So that's, I get the feeling that organic food prides people out of the market. So sure, how much do you care about your health and the environment, and how much are you willing to contribute economically? And the other question about organic, and this one, I don't know the pros and cons, but I am under the impression that, and I don't know anything about farming, but that it takes twice as much land or 3 times as much land to grow organic crops than non-organic crops. And this is a debate that it's been going on in my head for a long time. I have no idea of what I'm asking you, but this is the ideas going, the voices speaking inside of my head.
Well, I have to qualify myself a little bit and say I'm not a farmer, so I've just done some reading. The cost part of it, though, is valid, and it's everybody's concern. I kind of use a guideline for myself that I'm willing to pay 10, 15, 20% more and say, okay, this is my contribution to the environment, to doing good. But when you get to double the cost, then I start thinking in terms of what are the alternative things I can be eating. Let's let go of that banana. And that seems to work for me as a sort of a guideline. I'm willing to contribute, but I'm not willing to sacrifice to the point where it's hurting me. Now, there are some people that have limited incomes, and 10, 20% more for their food is like a big problem. And I would say at that point, you need to look at other things you can do besides organic food. One of my favorite things is basically read environmental books to children, because if you can plant the seeds for future stewards, people that really care for the planet, and maybe future leaders, you've done a whole lot. And I do think in terms of the long run, some of the things we do don't pan out as being world-saving moves in the next few months. They're more like we're working for the long run. So now in terms of the land, I have not heard that organic food actually takes more land. I could guess that you're correct. What I've run into is that there is a limited amount of land that is actually certified to be organic. And so we're actually selling about as much food as we can grow on the certified land. That's, yeah, that certified land is land that has been declared free of pesticides for 3 years, that kind of certification. So I think you may have a valid point there. It may be an issue, and I have to just say maybe so.
Okay, well then let's move down the and okay. In part of the food consumption, I have to admit that I am a vegan, so I don't eat mostly because well, there are two reasons: because I care about the welfare of animals, but also because I think this, you grow a corn to feed it to a cow so we can eat a cow. So it's just like we're getting the benefit of that cow to corn to a third hand, and in the way we pollute a lot of the planet. So I hear a lot of people that says, oh, you gotta eat grass-fed cattle or beef or whatever, and in my mind it says, well, that takes even 5 times as much land, and maybe you don't produce corn to feed that cow, but you are taking 5 times as much land in order to feed that cow. So I don't know where you stand, but that's where I stand.
Well, let's start with the fact that if you don't eat meat, you're eating lower in the food chain, and it's much better for the environment, less carbon released. I personally don't see myself as a vegan or a vegetarian. I just eat very little meat. Uh, I'm going to say I've had 1 or 2 hamburgers in the last year, and I can't remember when those were.
Great. Congratulations.
Yeah, and my wife is complimenting me on that respect. So we're on board with the whole idea that there's animal welfare issue, and there is also carbon, in the atmosphere. What I try to do is say that even if you eat meat, beef is like the worst of the meat because it has like twice the carbon emissions associated with beef than chicken per pound. And chicken has, what's the thing I'm thinking of here now? Twice, oh, I'm sorry. There's beef, and then there's pork. Pork is about half the emissions, and then there's chicken, which is about 1/4 of the emissions of beef. So you can be a little less impactful and still not be entirely pure. So I allow for that. That people that don't consider themselves religious can still be contributive to the solutions.
Okay, well, how else can we contribute towards reducing our footprint or having actions that are beneficial to the environment?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
What else can we do in order to contribute or reduce
besides food?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you talked about the political process. So yes, we can get involved in that. So plastic bags go into the ocean. We can get involved in banning plastic bags from our city, from our state or province, from our country. And there are examples all around the world of where that's been done. When corporations are moving into your area, you can pass laws that say, no, we don't want whatever it is that you're trying to impose on us that basically takes away the local resources and the sense of community. Also, you can participate in processes. I don't know whether Canada has the equivalent of the Superfund Act, which is basically waste cleanup, where we basically hold polluters responsible for the toxics that they put into the environment. And being involved in those processes and helping determine what the solutions, acceptable solutions are, is valid and a way of contributing to the greater good. Another thing is, if you don't have a lot of time, but you have an income, then we can talk about contributing to organizations that do all of these things.
Right.
Okay. There are bunches of really good environmental organizations out there trying to change the laws for the better and trying to protect the environment in one sense or another. There's some that are proactive and some that are reactive. I like to go for the proactive ones because they're the ones that might actually have the chance of changing the system, not just reducing the harm.
Right. One thing as a person who votes and frustrates me a lot is the government subsidizing oil producing companies. And of course, it just feels like I don't even know where to get started to voice my concern that these are industries that are making tons and tons of money. They don't need the help of government to subsidize whatever subsidy they need in order to produce more oil. I mean, they got all the money in the world. Why do they need the help of government in order to make more money? I mean, this is one of the things that drives me crazy. And as a voter, I mean, I feel so insignificant because it's not even in the ballot of how I feel about this subsidy towards oil companies.
Well, you're among friends in that respect. I would say a couple things to think about. One would be the carbon tax. The idea that wherever carbon is released, we find a way to tax that. So this can be at the power plant or at the fuel pump or companies that actually just release a lot of carbon as part of their business process. And then we want to be careful how we deal with the money that's raised from that carbon tax. If you put it toward your favorite cause, then your favorite cause will be happy. But if you take that carbon tax and you just lower taxes and give it to everybody, then you're benefiting everybody.
Right. Right.
So I want to be careful about how, you know, we liberals can take control of the thing and then realize that we're losing a constituency in the process.
Right.
The other part of it would be the demand piece. So electric cars are actually a big deal. If we can put the internal combustion engine out of business, essentially, we can make a big inroad in the demand for oil. And not only the demand for oil, but our knee-jerk anxiety if oil gets interrupted.
Right.
Because you know, we think of our cars as rights, and there's a whole story about why we might want to think of them as something we have a right to have. But it's a little bit like methadone versus heroin. Let's get you on something that's a little less impactful.
Right. Okay.
So I can't take on a lawyer from an oil company directly. Yeah, he's got a lot of power behind him, but I can work around that, and I can work on where he gets his money.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I think this is a positive movement, electric cars. And also globally, there are more and more cities creating cycling path, you know, because a bicycle is a legitimate good way to transport yourself. And if cities are making accommodating space for those cyclists, I think that's already of some benefits. In addition to that, many cities, my city included, and I think Portland as well, they are creating some streets where are for pedestrians only. And this only increases the popularity of the city. There are more and more tourists who want to visit and hang out. They feel safe without so many cars running around there. So it's good for the city itself, it's good for the environment, and it's good for the citizens. The only, I guess, losers in that game is people who believe that a car is an extension of their personality.
Well, I agree with you fully. I would throw in that getting involved in transportation planning processes is another way citizens can be involved. And it's kind of tedious, but I think very important. And it kind of goes back to my thinking that we all have certain gifts to bring to this movement, and certain ways that it's hard for us to participate. So I tend to be the analytical sort and the kind of person that sits in a meeting and actually can endure a long process. Other people, you know, they need to be planting trees, hands-on stuff. You can remodel your house if you really want to be hands-on. Let's get those LED light bulbs in there, and all the other kind of light bulbs moved on. You know, maybe we can take out that water heater that's that big tank that always loses energy out the sides of the tank, and put a demand water heater in there.
What is that? I read that in your book and I wasn't sure what is a demand water heater.
A demand water heater. Some people call it tankless water heaters. Basically, it heats the water when you turn the faucet on. Yeah, so you basically don't have a bunch of water sitting around getting cool when you don't want to use it. You have an instant on kind of thing. And they have them small, and you can just have it right for your shower, or in our case, we have it that supplies all the hot water to the house. And they're kind of spendy though. So I want to be careful and say, okay, there's your solution. But it's also good for society to cut down the demand on electricity or whatever, natural gas. So maybe there's rebates that will help pay for it. And we got a rebate back when, and by the way, it's not there anymore. So, you know, we found a window where that was a possibility. But it just makes a lot more sense to not have something that's sitting around wasting energy when you don't need it. Now, paying for it, you know, figuring it out, that does take a certain amount of creativity and effort.
Okay, and I think you brought this in your book about less consumption of clothing. I mean, we have something that is called the fast fashion, and people buy a item of clothing and use it once or twice, and then it gets thrown away. I mean, people use it, oh, if I use it for one party, this dress is useless. You know, people cannot see me again ever with this same dress, because what are they going to think of me? Or they take 2 photos of that, I don't know, blouse or jeans or shoes in Instagram, and because it's already been seen in Instagram, it have no other purpose. So, I mean, this will save a lot of money to be more conscious of the amount of, there's no shame in wearing the same item of clothing 20 times. I mean, I wear the same sweatshirt for almost all my interviews, and I don't care. I don't care. I'm not going to buy a different sweatshirt for each interview, and that's that.
Well, I would say there's 2 kinds of ways to look at that. First of all, reusing clothing saves the manufacturer of the clothing and saves the stuff going into the landfill. So you save twice whenever you do that. And you usually save money because it costs less than originals. So the logic is there. So I would say there's 2 kinds of things that different people might be appealed to. One is the low cost. Great, go to your thrift store, get something that cost a fraction of what it did at the new store. The other is style. There are companies that actually resell stylish clothing. In our country, Crossroads and Buffalo Exchange are companies that actually they purchase used clothing from people that's stylish and in good condition, and they resell it and they make a profit.
Right.
And they've got multiple stores in their chain, so they've been making a profit for a while. This isn't one of these things where you start it up and you're experimenting and you go out of business. This shirt comes from a giveaway. So this is where people have a celebration, like a birthday or a wedding or something like that, and they put nice things out there that they no longer need, or that maybe they even purchased for the giveaway as gifts. And this one happens to fit me, and I've been wearing it for, 5 years or something like that.
Congratulations.
And who knows why the person gave it away? Maybe it wasn't the right style for them,
Right.
So that's another kind of moving it on. And I think giveaways are a great response to the birthday party and the Christmas situation where you're constantly expecting things.
I'm sorry, John. I feel like I'm just bringing up to you all my grievances and all the things that annoy me. So I'm just going to mention one or two more. And I don't know what kind of comment you're going to bring. But here in Montreal, there is a place that is called Mountain Mont Royal, which is a mountain, a park in the middle of the city. And when I climb that mountain at night, and I see all the high risers in the city, all of them, even at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, all of them have their lights on. And there's no one in those offices. And I just cannot understand why the owner of those properties will keep the lights on 24 hours a day. And one more thing, I don't go to fancy restaurants too often, but I do occasionally. And when I go into one of those bathrooms, the water in the urinal is running 24 hours a day, where there's people there or not, it's just running there. So I see that as a complete waste of water in the bathroom and a complete waste of electricity in those high-rise buildings, all of them, all around the city with the lights on at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. It just drives me crazy.
Well, let me deal with the easy one first. Most urinals in this country are flush urinals, so I don't see the constant running here. So that may be a cultural thing that you have to deal with there. Also here in Oregon, we have demonstrated at state parks and so forth where you can do waterless urinals, and they find that they don't smell. The people that are really arguing most for the pipes and all that are the plumbers, the people that actually install these things. They say, oh, you've got to have water to flush it down. Right. Well, you do need water to flush down the solid waste, but not the urinal waste. Okay, so it depends on what your local constituencies are able to deal with in terms of change in culture. The lights on, I agree with you, there's a problem, and I'm not sure I have an easy answer to the problem. I do have a response, though, to the idea of high rises. And I'll say that just because it is in the book. When you live in a apartment or something that has common walls with your neighbors, you're going to use less energy.
Right.
Because you don't have to heat and cool that wall, because your neighbor is heating and cooling that wall to the point where it balances out. So this is proven time and time again that people that live in multifamily dwellings use less energy. And I heard one statistic that New York City, if it were a state, would be the 51st state in terms of energy use per capita. So this is not, and also the density also has, less transportation use per energy and better use of the public transportation, that kind of thing. So the good news is, if you're willing to live in those kind of situations, which some of us would rather not, I applaud you. but I really don't know how to get those lights turned off. That might be a local government initiative, and you might have to think about it a little bit. If I were an astronomer, I'd like them to be turned off. But most astronomers settle for going to a night sky that's far away from the cities.
Right. It figures that if I'm the one, I don't know, administrating a building, I would like to lower the cost. And if no one is in the office, then, but anyway, that
Well, I will speak to that. Uh, it's not new anymore. It used to be new. So let's say 20 years ago, we were talking about leaving the lights in the offices on all the time. But now we have motion sensors that are pretty reliable. And so when you walk into the room, you turn the lights on. And they've done a lot of work with that, so it's good. So I think the lights you're seeing are the safety lights, the lights that they want to make sure are on, so people aren't creeping around where they shouldn't be.
okay, I hope so.
That's my gift. But even that.
I hope so, but it doesn't look like that. It looks like every light in these office buildings are on. Well, I have one more grievance, and I know you don't have the answer. Is our society desire to show wealth? So here, Montreal is a street that have small roads, and it drives me crazy when I see someone driving a huge Hummer. Those huge vehicles. They are only to show off how much wealth this person have, how much he's willing or she is willing to waste money in gas and tell to the public, I can waste $100,000 in this useless vehicle and waste all this energy keeping this automobile on. And this another thing is just, why not show your wealth in other ways other than showing how much waste you can generate for the environment?
Well, I could echo that. One of the things I try to do is accept human nature.
Yes, I have
as
a
a
hard time with
starting.
that. Yes.
So, big houses and big cars are way beyond what people need. The size of the house is a lot larger than it used to be, and the size of the family is smaller than it used to be. So people are using a lot more. I really try to work with the psychology of working with where people do care. And so, okay, so you got to display your wealth. Let's display your wealth by giving to some worthwhile causes. Okay, these organizations that are making a difference. That's fine. Let's display your wealth by initiating some sort of thing that us mere mortals have a hard time initiating. Well, for instance, this one guy that made a lot of money, millions and millions of dollars in the tech world, took on a whole national park in Africa. And he created a 20-year joint management with the local government. I think it was Mozambique. And so he's got all his management skills. That's how he made his money, right? But they own the park. And they get title of it at the end of the day. And what he's doing is he's helping the whole country be a better manager of their park. And he's doing it in the long run. And that takes millions of dollars every year for him to do that. That, to me, is something I hope he takes out a display ad in the New York Times that says, look at me, how good I am.
Right.
Well,
Right.
If you could find ways of displaying your ego that are healthy, go for it.
Yeah, I have a fantasy. I can only make enough money to survive. But if I was wealthy, one of the initiatives that I would create would be to give free bicycles or I don't know, 90% price reduction on bicycles, so that people who want to transport themselves in bicycle can afford one. And maybe there will be more cycling paths because more people have more bicycles. So if I were to become a billionaire, that would be one of my initiatives, to give bicycles to anyone who wants one.
Well, I think that anyone who wants one is important. You know, if people actually want the bicycle and are going to ride it, then that's good. Otherwise, giving them to them is like,
Yeah,
they're
right.
going to do something anyhow. So give them an incentive for riding it. You
Mm.
know, show me a picture of you riding the bicycle, over the next 3 months, and I'll give you an extra $50. Or play around with it, make it a game,
Okay.
make it art.
Okay, well, John, this is an amazing conversation. I can talk about the environment all day long, but I'm sure you have better things to do. I wonder if you could tell our listeners the title of the book and where they can follow you.
Sure. Uh, our environmental handprints, recover the land, reverse global warming, reclaim the future.
Perfect. And
And
you
where
have
can
our
our
website?
listeners? Yes, that's the best way. JonBiemer.com.
John, thank you so much for your time.
JonBiemer.com. www.johnbiemer.com. And there will be 5 booksellers there on the website, and you can possibly Google it and find it that way too.
John, thank you for your time.
Okay, and thank you.